Pastor Larry, Hineni. So first of all, 25 years. We just had that this past weekend. Let's talk about the standing ovation that happened. Did you walk out and feel the flood of emotion that you anticipated you might feel? Like, what was that moment for you?
Yeah, it was a flood of emotion.
Yeah.
A lot of appreciation, some humility, saying, yeah, this is a lot of applause for a journey that I've been on my entire life, and a lot of friends that came to see it, and many people were tuning in, and just the fact that they were affirming me, it made me feel glad and a little embarrassed at the same time.
That's good. I think sitting in there, I already had watched the video, obviously. I sat in both services, and it was such a cool, just proud moment to be in there and to be a part of that whole thing. You could just feel the love for sure. I want to take people into a little sneak peek behind the scenes. So I think this was Wednesday, the week before this 25-year anniversary. And Ryan and I had worked for the previous couple of days to get this video pretty much to the point where we wanted to show you. And you, again, put your trust in us because we kind of said, we're going to do something. We think it's going to be a good idea. We don't quite know, but just, will you trust us? And you were like, yes. That's been the fashion since the beginning of doing videos here. It's always been, I trust you, do it. You'd actually watch videos for the first time on the stage. And then the lights would come up and you'd turn around and kind of be like, well, there was that thing. So this one we were like, it's your story. So we obviously wanted you to watch it beforehand. And you come into our office and you sat down. And this is one of my ultimate favorite. This is kind of why I make videos, is to sit and watch how somebody is being affected by it. And obviously the overwhelming emotion, you're reliving all those moments from that video. And even us looking through all the pictures, it was like, I feel like I discovered you and your story for the first time in those pictures. And I'm sure a lot of people did as well. What did that feel like for you to watch that highlight reel, essentially, of your life? What did that feel like?
It was humbling, but also I liked it. I mean, you like seeing yourself. Everybody likes to see themselves, I think, in pictures, and some of them very young. But the pictures of me were not nearly as endearing to me as the pictures of my children when they were young.
Yeah.
I mean, when they have Laura hitting that piano, playing pretty well, and then Stacy's playing a little less, and then Ryan sitting there rock and roll and hitting one note. And I watched the crowd laugh at that, and that was very well done. And the humor's there. The video was moving. I thought you guys did an excellent job keeping the subject matter not static.
Yeah.
You kept it alive, and in 8 minutes there was a lot of history that went on in 8 minutes.
So, and we had to obviously cut things out of it, so that's not the full story. But the I think the graduation ceremony, you said you had not seen that footage before?
No, if I have, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I see this video of my PhD graduation, and walking in, I go, wow, I didn't know we even had that.
Yeah.
And Becky had taken that. Obviously, I didn't take it myself.
Yeah.
but I thought that's pretty good. And the other thing, pretty good keepsake, the other thing it reminded me is that there have been some guys that claim to have credentials and they do not.
Right.
And it was kind of one of those, if you want to, there's some proof in the pudding there.
Yeah.
And but I've known two guys that were just falsely proclaiming their one was saying he was a doctor of whatever, psychology, and the other was a doctor of some kind of counseling, and both were fraudulent. So when I saw that, I go, well, there's a little background. There is a little bit of evidence.
Yeah. And even talking to Ryan about his memory of that day, he's like, I could feel that this was very important to my dad. And I loved seeing just the kids there. You can hear, I don't know if it's your family, but it kind of sounds like one of them saying something like, "Go Dad," when they're all clapping. So just having your family be a part of this wasn't something that you did before you had children. So what do you think that did? And obviously it's a significant, but it is a small part, obviously, of the whole journey of being a father. But what do you think you accomplishing something like that did for your kids?
I really don't know the answer to that. I was more interested when I was doing that to make sure that my kids are not deprived of family vacation, that they still saw their dad, that I still had to be a dad of 3 kids, and also I worked full-time and went to school full-time. So it was up at 5 o'clock. By the time I'd leave, I'd see them before they went to school, and then sometimes I would get home in the evening if I could, but if not, they'd already be in bed. But I always tried to make time for them when I could. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted them, and I never really thought about the impact of the degree, but I did think about the impact of being an absent father, and I was unwilling to let that happen.
Yeah.
So that took a lot of work too.
Yes. One of the things Ryan said was, in watching all of this, he was reminded of how sweet you were as a father. And it's so true. All the footage, you hear you in the background, just kind of, it's just a very sweet, light, encouraging kind of figure. And it really did make me feel like I got to see a different side of you. Obviously, I've known you for a long time, and I've heard them talk about you, Laura, Stacy, and Ryan, but I think seeing you as a father, it just kind of all came around very, very full circle, where it was like, okay, I see the consistency of who you've been your whole life. And I think that's what Suncoast probably got a glimpse of this past weekend was, okay, this is somebody who's been very consistent just in who you are. You are somebody that will literally give the shirt off your back to somebody. And I feel like that's been your whole life. Where do you think you learned that from?
That's a good question. I mean, and maybe I give my mother a few kudos here. Yeah. She's always been a person who would, I describe her, she picks up stray dogs.
Oh, yeah.
And, but usually when I say that, it's after someone said, where'd she get her husband? So she picks up stray dogs. But my mother's always been the person that would take kids to the doctor's office, or she would take people food. And we barely had enough for ourselves, but she was always that type. I remember many years ago, we used to have evangelists. This is when I was married, and down here there was a wife of an evangelist who had passed away. And she came to me, her name was Jane, and his name was Forrest. And she said, when Forrest and I were young and we were staying in Nashville, she said, your mom would have us over for dinner. And she said, and it was so appreciated. But it was, she always had you kids dressed and in church and had you there, and she always was willing to share whatever they had with them. And wow. I thought that's a pretty good tribute to my mom.
Yeah.
So maybe part of that generosity is there. The other part is that I really realize that everything that I have is a gift, and I love giving back. When I was in high school, we didn't have any resource, and I was working a lot just to own a car, and I worked my way from the time I was 15 on. I worked full time, so it's just all the way. I've always worked.
Yeah.
But going out to lunch with the family's name was McGuire, Terry and Thurman and Gene, and the dad passed away, but his name was Gene as well. But he owned a body shop, and he'd take us to lunch, and I would be wet sanding a car or whatever, and he would, I'd be ready to pay, but he always bought my lunch. And I thought, how generous. I mean, I never expected this guy to buy my lunch. And I thought, someday I'm going to buy lunch.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things in my life where I love to buy lunch, and I love to pay for meals, and it just becomes part of your nature. I don't give to get, but I have plenty. And I began to realize you can be generous. I love to give to people. I love to give to the church. I love to give to my family. It's just at the end of your life, you're not going to be measured by what you kept, but how generous you are.
I really like that. I mean, I guess we should get into one more thing, huh?
Yeah, I think we're there.
So this past weekend, you talked a little bit about the people that were there, obviously, in the early days. And we kind of went through the history. What is your vision for, like, what is Suncoast to you now? And do you feel like you've settled into the thing that you're just like, this is what I've always dreamed of, this is good how it is? Do you have giant dreams for the future?
Well, I mentioned this, life is like whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
There's always a big boulder there, and there's always a little bit of tension. And my life has been lived in the tension. It's always something. It's never been without something. It's from the time early on to where you're trying to buy land, you buy it, and then how do you pay for it? Once you get there, then how do you build the building, the stress of doing that? How do you get the school to be developed and move there? And then you're denied by the county, and then how do you make all this happen? And it's work, and it's and then one day the puzzle piece falls into place, and oh, this is great, but the puzzle is still there, and
Yeah.
there's still pieces. Today, I think we've weathered some theological storms. We've gone through and said we're going to be true to who we are. We're going to try to be as honest about Jesus and Bible and spiritual teaching as we can, and I don't think the traditional church has been that. I think they tell what they know. They just don't realize that they're repeating a fabrication that's not necessarily true, but they don't know any better.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're not telling the truth, but they're just not getting water from the right pond, so to speak. But I think that where we are now is a good place. I think it's a sweet spot in life. There's a lot of unity. There's not a real strain. So then we build an 81 Oaks senior living facility, and financing and COVID and trying to get occupancy, and we're still waiting to move the first residents in. So there's always a strain between where and when I get there, it's going to be, oh, that's going to be great, but there'll be something else.
Yeah.
Then there's another phase. There's this or that. I always dreamed of having some way to educate young adults, and how we incorporate that, I do not know. But we have the staff that could do that. I just don't know if we'd have the constituents who want that. It used to be I'd go to conferences. It's time for us to be a place where we should be a center. We should be a conference. We should host a conference and say, this is what it's going to be about, reconstruction of Christianity in the 21st century. How do you get beyond the deconstruction?
Yeah.
How do you get there? And I think it's a better place to be on this side, because you can start having a positive momentum.
Right.
I use the analogy of a surgery. I've had both my shoulders repaired and on a rotator cuff repair. On the right shoulder, which is my dominant arm, I went for 6 months in excruciating pain and tried every technique I knew. And finally, after the surgery, I started healing. But I didn't heal until the surgery took place. Then a few months later, my shoulder feels good. It's great. And I think in the course and history of many churches, there's a lot of pain, and they're not ready for the surgery. But if they go through the surgery, I think that the outcome on the other side would make them more healthy, less toxic, and a better example of what it means to be Christ to the community.
Right. What is the surgery in that analogy?
Well, I think we have to quit tearing things up.
Yeah.
We need to start rebuilding them. You can have damage in your shoulder, and at some point you've got to say, okay, we're going to reconstruct this. I'm tired of deconstruction.
Yeah.
People are going through their own deconstruction. I understand, and they need to. But I want to be the guy that says, I want to be on the other side saying, come on over. You're in the surf where the waves are high, and on the sandbar they're just beating you to death, and I'm on the beach saying, you just need to swim a little bit more, get through those strong waves, and you'll find a place where you can enjoy the sun and enjoy life a little better. And it still provides hope, spiritual strength. I think the spiritual guidance, all the things you're looking for are there. We just got to get through all these breakers before you get to the shore.
One of the things that I recently heard about the role of God in some people's lives, maybe somebody who's very science-minded, who's like, if I can't have proof, then, I may not believe this thing, but, their life may not be going the way that they would like it to. And I believe it was Carl Jung who said, if you can act as if God is real, it's almost the fake it till you make it kind of a thing. That works for some people. And I think the reconstruction is in that same vein where it's going, okay, you may not know exactly what your faith will be. You may not know exactly what your belief system will look like, but just know you can get to the other side. You look at the beach and you see there are a bunch of people out there, but imagine if you were getting pounded by waves and you looked out and there was nobody on the beach.
All right.
That would be, or everybody's just in the waves with you screaming and you're like, how do we get out of this? So you want to see yourself as somebody who's on the beach saying, come over here, come over here. What is the number one thing? I know that if you look at the whole thing as like a brick wall, I know that's been an analogy before, but what would you say is the primary thing? If people can just take that, run towards that, apply it to their life, what would you say that is? What would you say the essence of God and living a godly life looks like?
That's a great question. And my mind is whirring with a variety of answers. So I don't know if this is the priority, but I would say the sense of oneness with God within me. When you get to the place you go, God lives in you. no matter who you are, no matter what nationality you are, whether you're Russian or Ukraine or whatever, you're all God's kids, and we're all connected in some sort. If we get to that, I think that'd be helpful. I think that another thing that is as important would be to understanding the Bible in a better way. See, the Bible has become this authority, this Word of God, and with that, you've lost the sense of story. You've lost the sense of human understanding through the ages, and people read it as absolute. They do not read the original languages, which can be translated in a variety of ways, and they make this Bible something that keeps them in line, even though it's only been around in that capacity for 500 years. Before that, people couldn't read. There was no printing press. You really didn't have it. So only the church had the books, and even the church constructed those. So somewhere we got to get beyond the Bible as this infallible. You got to get beyond that. So there's truths in it, and let's teach from the truths. But that can't be the thing that dominates, because it can do a lot of toxic things to people. So part of the deconstruction is shifting understanding there, shifting understanding more of the humanity of Jesus needs to be in the play. I think some of the fundamental doctrines that are in the church that have been around since the early 1900s, those fundamentals were simply an attempt to try to. I'm being attacked by modern science. These things are going to be out of bounds. And no matter what it says, I'm going to stand there and beat the drum and say these things are real, or put earmuffs on, and no matter what the conflicting science or voices are, you just become so narrow with your head in the sand. Let's get beyond that, because I think there's more. And then there's the word hope that I love to. Got to have hope. So I don't know if it's one thing, but it's this combination of a variety of things that make us, that allow us to get to the shore and to start digging in the sand and maybe seeing cement poured there to where there's a firm foundation on which to build the next life, or construct a theology that'll go for the next generation or so. And maybe down the road, they'll need to transition to something else.
Right, because life changes.
Life changes.
Yeah.
But these ancient truths that pass down, if we find these gems hidden within all the literary text, if we can find them, I think they're the things that translate through time.
Yes,
but
exactly.
not everything does. And unfortunately, we just think, well, every word and sentence translates through it. It does not.
But the most important stuff I have found in all the creative work that I've done, that's my thing, is I'm always digging for what is the most valuable human thing here. We always say it. We either need to make people laugh or cry. There's something that should happen. And I think digging and digging and digging and trying to find those things, it's not easy work. So it would make sense that it's not something that's surface level and, it's easy. You just do this thing, because then it doesn't actually impact you in a way that will bring something good to your life. And I think that's maybe why a lot of people are leaving it behind, because they're going, this doesn't actually apply to my life anymore. It needs to grow. It needs to change. We need to dig a little deeper and find, okay, what is the meaningful thing now? How can I take this and apply it? Because I think it's so sad to throw all of that away and just go, it's not relevant anymore. It's like, no, it's more relevant than you could ever imagine. You just have to. And, there are some people who spend their whole lives digging, and they find the gem and they say, trust me, I think this is a good gem. Instead of having to go out, in the mind by yourself going, I think this is a gem. I think this is a gem. I don't know. Go for the people who live their lives in a way that you can maybe adopt something from them. And I would say this past weekend, for me personally, through making that video, through watching the response from people, I would say you are a gem finder. So I think we're all very, very lucky. And something that the creative team has talked about is not only has that decision to start Suncoast that you made all those years ago impacted your life, and there's plenty of people, but Ricardo talks about how Suncoast led him to Laura. I met Ryan here. Like, all of us are friends. We've all come together, and it's impacted our lives. I've done video. It was my dream that I had before, and this was the first place that put a camera in my hand and said, go, do it. So the ripple effect is just absolutely insane. So I can't wait to see what comes in the future. I feel like this little podcast should be called 10 More Things instead of one more thing. But do you have anything else to add?
No, it's been a great week. I look forward to the weeks ahead. I think that with the team we have and also with Troy. He's a great teacher, and Brett's there too as a great leader. And we're just fortunate to have Susan and Kevin, and we go through and name all the names. Kyle,
And
what's
Becky and
Kyle's last name?
This one?
Yeah.
He is a production guy, Kyle. Has no last name.
He has no last. Kyle.
Curcio?
Curcio.
Yeah.
I want to say that publicly. Curcio. Correctly, publicly. So, but
Did you say it wrong at some point?
I guess I did. I had it. I thought it was sausage. Chorizo.
Chorizo,
Yeah.
nice.
So anyway, but life is good, and I'm looking forward to the days ahead. We have lots of good things coming up, and I'm proud to be a part of it.